And we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a pile of new e-bike and e-scooter and other micromobility stories for you guys this week. We're going to cover everything from a new e-bike kit from Clip. We've just learned that Rad Power Bikes CEO has left the company under somewhat unclear terms and kind of secretly. There's a new sort of gravel slash road e-bike unveiled from Orbea. That's the Denna. We're going to cover Segway and Apollo's new fast electric scooters. And we're going to see a little bit about that $2,000 electric mini truck that I bought a few years ago. So where are we going to start off, Seth?
All right. Let's go to Clip Unveils BOLT, a $250 e-bike conversion system aimed at expanding access to cycling.
This is an interesting one because if you guys remember that Clip e-bike conversion kit, it was kind of that unicorn horn looking thing that mounted on the front fork. Had a friction drive setup, so it would put a roller on the front tire and cause the front wheel to spin. And that was like I want to say $500-ish kit from Clip, but now they've come out with the Bolt, which is sort of a more bare bones version of that. And it's much more affordable. It's only $250. And they're actually going to be offering a $100 version, largely in developing countries like India, that doesn't come with a battery, but instead uses a battery swapping subscription model. And so this is really interesting because while the first Clip kit was designed mostly for direct to consumer sales, this Bolt is more meant as a business to business solution. So they seem to be targeting bike sharing companies or other fleet usage places that would buy a pile of these kits at once and convert a whole bunch of bikes to electric drive. It doesn't even seem like they're going to offer this commercially to consumers in a D2C way, at least not initially, especially with this focus on fleet usage and that sort of thing, which to me is a bit strange because they very much started as a direct to consumer company. With their first kit, it was designed for people to just bolt right onto their own bike. And if you look at any large scale fleet operation, right? So like bike share companies, hotels that rent out bikes, that sort of thing. Generally, they're going with more robust, higher dollar initially bikes, but that can withstand every day getting 4 or 5 new riders kicking them over kind of thing. So this is obviously a very low cost kit, $250. That's crazy low for an e-bike conversion kit. And it goes a sort of a different direction than what we normally see bike sharing companies or any fleet operators go with. The other thing is that this is a friction drive, which they do still exist, having that friction roller on the front wheel, but they're very, very rare. There was the Rubby kit was one other that we reviewed a few years ago. But it's just not a very common way to do it. It's even some people would say a little bit primitive in the e-bike space. There were commercial e-bikes you could buy in the 90s that used friction drives, and so while they do have some advantages, they don't touch any other component of the bike. They have disadvantages as well, that they're usually only front wheel drive. They cause faster tire wear, though I think current designs are a little better about preserving tires, but they do have some downsides as well. So it's an interesting direction to go here, but I'm not sure that other than the super attractive price, I see the main draw from a business to business user as I do for a private consumer that just wants something they can easily literally clip on and clip off of their bike. I don't know. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, I think that's the advantage of a system like this, is that you can just bring this with you and clip it on a regular acoustic bike and pretty much get most of the advantages of an electric bike. I do like the friction drive thing is for me kind of a little bit sketchy. I mean, I know if you go through rain, does it grip as much? If it's not fit on there exactly right, does it feel the same? So I understand the concerns there. doesn't seem like the right business model to sell these in fleets, though. Like, if you're buying a robust bike anyway, the price of, built-in electric, system seems like it would not be a big step up. Although, when you start pricing out those bulky electric bikes, they get pretty expensive. So, um, yeah, I guess it's just something to keep an eye on there. When you clip these on, how do you control the speed? Is it something that, I see that yellow wire there in the if you're watching? Um, is that connected to the handlebars, or is this like, is it just smart enough to know when it's accelerating?
Yeah, I think that's just connecting it straight to the batteries in the side of the kit there. I believe that it senses how fast you're already moving based on the pedaling input. So, it sort of measures wheel speed and says like, oh, you want to go this fast? And then it spins up the motor to match is how I understand it. I don't think that you need to add more wiring to the handlebars or that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think the original clip might have had an optional throttle, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was just like a little sort of on-off switch on the handlebars, but I think it was wireless, so you didn't have to like run anything. But this one, especially with it being designed for developing countries, I wouldn't be surprised if it's designed to be more simple, and just like an all-in-one kit, measures your rolling speed and matches it.
Right. And for $250, you can't put a lot of components in there as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Good to see. All right. Let's move on. Orbea unveils Denna, a fancy schmancy mid-drive electric road bike tuned for gravel.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people call gravel bikes just like off-road road bikes, which is kind of true. And so, they share a lot of components. This is Orbea's newest e-bike. It's a high-end brand from Spain. This is a full carbon uh, gravel. They call it a gravel e-road or a gravel optimized electric road bike. And so what that means is that it's built to be a bit stronger, a bit more robust. It has wider clearance for up to 50C tires, which are much larger than you'd put on a typical road bike. It also the frame is interestingly designed so that it's got a bit of flex sort of in the vertical axis, but it's very rigid in the front to rear, so that you don't get that flex when you're pedaling, but you get a little more compliance, almost like suspension in the frame. Not true suspension, but the frame has a little more flex vertically while you're riding, especially if you are doing stereotypical gravel riding, fire roads, gravel roads, light trails, that sort of thing. And for a road or gravel e-bike, it actually has a pretty large battery. It's, I want to say, 410 or 420 watt hours.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's like you don't normally see that much battery shoved into one of these, very light carbon frames. So it's cool to see that much battery. They rate it in an interesting way. They say it's rated for, I want to say, uh, 3 or 5 kilometers of vertical climbing, which is a strange way to to rate range. My guess is, in a efficient gravel bike, you're probably looking at like 75 miles or so on 420 watt hours if you're using a pretty low pedal assist. But I think they're really pitching this thing for getting out there on trails, climbing mountain roads, that sort of thing. It does use one of Shimano's newer motor systems here, and it's also designed to pair with all of the popular like Garmin's like road biking apps, all the different wireless bike monitors or health monitors, that sort of thing. So it's got a lot of built-in tech there as well. It's also got Shimano's newest system. I believe it uses the Shimano battery as well, if I'm not mistaken. So between that and the carbon frame, it's a pretty nice bike. It is very expensive. Like, you don't get into carbon road bikes and get out for cheap. So I think it starts at something like $6,000 for the basic bare bones version, And then, you can get the nicer drivetrain, the nicer derailleur, probably, upgrade the handlebars, maybe full carbon, etc. And then the price gets up to almost $10,000, I want to say. That might be with the range extender battery too. That, for a lot of people who are doing road or gravel riding, they're going on really long rides. So you can add another like 50% battery or so to almost, add a 50% more range there. So a lot of interesting options here, a bit outside of my budget, but, a beautiful, what looks like nicely designed gravel bike nonetheless. I don't do too much gravel biking myself. I'm more of like either a hybrid urban or mountain biker, but I've got a friend who's all over gravel bikes, and I can see him like drooling over this thing.
Yeah, I mean, price obviously is a consideration, but what does this thing weigh? It's got to be like 30 pounds or something.
Yeah, I don't see the weight, but yeah, I mean it's with the carbon frame. The heaviest part's probably the battery. Like it's bigger than I would have expected.
Yeah, and so it comes with a 420 watt hour battery, but you can add on a water bottle um, type of external battery as well that adds 210 watt hours of battery. So
Yeah,
that's 630 watt hours. That's huge for, a gravel bike that, for all intents and purposes, looks mostly like like it, you won't immediately think this was an electric bike. I mean, looking
oh
closer, you
yeah.
can see.
Especially since carbon frames are usually, a little thicker anyway, so you get that larger tube size. I mean,
Right.
you unless you were like really looking and you're like, oh wait, that's like a motor hidden behind that chainring, you could definitely mistake this for just being a acoustic pedal bike.
Yeah. And when are these going to be in people's hands? Are they already out or?
I think they're already available on the site. I'm not sure if they're shipping yet, but I believe they're on the site and they may already be shipping.
And I saw European prices. Well, all prices are pretty high, but I saw European prices. Um, is this going to be one of those mostly in Europe, but we'll send a few to the US kind of thing, or?
I think they also sell in the US as well. So I think it's one of those, if you've got the money, we'll travel kind of situation.
Yeah, those things pricey. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, but I guess that's if you're getting into the high end, this is what you're in for.
Yeah. You want some like guy in a workshop in Spain laying up your carbon frame by hand. It costs a pretty penny.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Tell me to pronounce this. Velotric?
I say Velotric. Yeah.
Okay. Velotric Nomad 2 review, a feature-packed fat tire e-bike with crazy comfort.
This is probably one of the most comfortable of the fat tire full size adventure style bikes. So, there are a lot of these types of bikes out there. It's like the Rad Rover style or the Aventon Adventure style, Ride One Up Rift style, that sort of thing. And this is Velotric's latest update to it. It's the Nomad 2. It follows the Nomad 1 Plus, and they've really upped the comfort here. Now, there's a lot going on. The whole bike's UL listed, the batteries UL listed. They also do submersible batteries. A while back, I took the Velotric Discover 2 and like dunked it in a water tank, and it was fine. But on the comfort side, the bike includes not just a 100 millimeter travel hydraulic front fork, but it also has a super wide saddle and parallel linkage suspension seat post. So that's something that we rarely see as stock on bikes like these. Normally you got to go out and buy like a $200 suspension seat post if you want something like that. Also, usually, especially these budget e-bikes, they come with like a basic saddle. If you want something that doesn't hurt after an hour, you got to upgrade, put your own saddle, whatever style you like. And this one has a really wide, very nice saddle that didn't prevent me from pedaling nicely. I was out there on single track and I could still pedal it just fine, but like it felt like a captain's chair under me. Like I could ride all afternoon on that thing. The
Yeah, I
bike,
mean, you get
yeah,
the fat tires and the suspension saddle. At that point, you really don't need rear suspension.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not the same as rear suspension, but it goes a lot of the way there to getting the effect, at least the comfort effect, not the handling effect of
Mhm.
rear suspension. Obviously for, less weight, less cost, etc., because you're not paying for all that linkage in the rear.
Right.
And of course, with these fat tire electric bikes, especially the more budget ones, it's nice to be able to go off roading. But I think most people are probably spending most of their time on roads. And so, it does come with the fender package. It comes with really good LED lights. The front headlight is light sensing, so it'll turn on in the dark. The rear lights include turn signals, which are actually kind of decent. Like sometimes I make fun of turn signals on bikes because you can barely tell that that's what they're supposed to be. But these, not only is the turn signal amber, so it stands out, but they're fairly wide as far as bike turn signals go. So you've got a prayer of a car understanding it. I would still never rely on it myself. I still, do my hand signals when I'm in traffic, but they're getting better. The bike turn signals, I will say. Um, Included rear rack. It's got a nicer derailleur than the normal, cheap Tourney or cheap Altus. It's got a 8-speed Shimano Acera, so it's like one step up on the Shimano hierarchy there. It's got like
Mhm.
15 levels of pedal assist. And then one other cool feature, which we don't see often, but it's starting to become a little more common, is not only does it have a torque sensor, but you can choose whether you're using the torque sensor or the cadence sensor for the pedal
Really?
assist. Yeah. And so at first that struck me as odd. It was like, why would I downgrade to using the cadence sensor? But there's sort of one use case where I can see that's really nice is when you do want to pedal, but you don't want to be forced to pedal hard to go fast. You want to kind of ghost pedal. You're still moving your
Oh
legs.
yeah.
You're getting some mobility. Then the cadence sensor is nicer because it's true when you're using the torque sensor, it's more intuitive, it's more natural feeling, but it requires you to actually work more because it's reading your power, not just your
Right.
movement.
It's like foot throttle mode. You're basically just moving
Exactly.
to
Yeah. And
okay.
so there are people who like the foot throttle. Maybe they don't have very strong legs, but they don't want to be passive. They want to at least get their legs moving. So you can go back to that foot throttle if you prefer, which is kind of a cool concept. Let's see. It's what
We're
else?
looking
It's
at
got obviously the hydraulic disc brakes. I think it's actually got a 203 millimeter front rotor and 180 millimeter rear. So some good components here, especially with the included rear rack and fenders and everything. It's like you don't have to add anything right out of the box to get like a fully functional off-roader that you can commute with as well. Now it is pricey. It's $2,000, which is a decent bump over like the usually like $1,500 to $1,700 entry level fat tire electric bikes in the US. But I would say that it's got a several $100s worth of upgrades over the basic fat tire e-bike. There we just saw it's got Apple Find My as well, which I
is
really
that
like.
built in or is that
Oh
built
yeah.
in or do you have to stick something in your
No,
seat or
it's
something?
it's it's built into it, which is nice because if your AirTag's low on battery, which I think I have like 10 AirTags, and there's always like 6 of them that are low on battery. You don't
Right,
have to
yeah.
worry that like oh, if it gets stolen, it's going to die in like a week kind of thing. Like it's the Apple Find My is powered off the main battery, and then it's got its own little backup battery for a while. If they take the battery of the bike out, so
Interesting.
um, yeah, I really like bikes that have some form of built-in tracker. And if anything, I kind of prefer the AirTag style or the Apple Find My because GPS usually it's like a yearly subscription to use GPS trackers with bikes, and
Right.
so the AirTag's free, right? Like it just works. And I live in a city, so there's always people with iPhones around. If you get stolen on a trail, you're probably screwed. But if you're in a city, it's going to be pinging off of someone's phone soon.
Right. I mean, almost everybody's got iPhones. Even the criminals are probably
Yeah.
telling you where they're at. That's funny. Um, and at $2,000, not bad because the premium stuff like the seat post and the AirTag and It looked like a nice display there. So I would call this something like more like mid tiers. I mean, is that kind of a new direction for Velotric to go a little bit upmarket?
I would say each of their launches in the past year or two has been getting progressively nicer, but this is definitely their nicest yet. So it does seem like they're moving up market there,
Yeah.
but they still have their more low cost, budget friendly bikes as well. So which makes me really happy because to me it's not like they're sort of pulling a rad where they're going too far up market with $2,500 e-bikes.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like careful guys, like don't get don't get
Yeah,
ahead of
we've
yourself.
seen this story before.
Right. All
Yeah, so
right.
this one definitely a very nice entry into the fat tire market. Pricier, but it's not like you're just paying for the name. Like you're getting stuff for that price tag.
And is this class 3? Does it go 28
Yeah,
miles per hour?
yeah, it ships as class 2, but you can unlock it and go class 3.
Oh, good. I'm glad the regulations aren't hitting everybody.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here. Speaking of Rad Power Bikes CEO secretly exits amid more layoffs and an uncertain future.
This one was a bit strange. So, um, Rad CEO Phil Molyneux, he came in I think it was 2022, the very end of 2022 from Sony. He was a Sony CEO and worked at Dyson as well. So he's like a big C-level guy at a lot of large companies. He was brought in to replace Mike Radenbaugh, the original founder of Rad Power Bikes, and late last month, his LinkedIn was updated to say that he no longer, or there was like an end date to his working at Rad Power Bikes. It wasn't like through present. And his status was updated to something like searching for what's next or something, like even with a typo in it. Like it was done very quickly. Um, and so I reached out to Rad and was like, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" Took me a little while to get a response because several people in their PR team have been let go, like my main contacts, in multiple rounds of layoffs, unfortunately. And so I didn't get a response. I wrote up the story that it, looked like quietly Rad CEO had left, and then afterwards I got a response from their just nameless press email account that basically said something to the effect of, "We've announced that Phil Molyneux has stepped down as CEO." Just like, you didn't announce it, I
Yeah.
announced it. You confirmed.
Yeah, and usually you don't have the CFO take over as interim CEO. Like that's not something you do. Like I
Yeah,
mean, if you're going to elevate somebody to CEO, that's something, but it's kind of like she's just going to be doing that too. Kind
yeah.
of
And
situation.
also, I don't think they ever replaced their COO, which I only realized when I started digging deeper into this, who stepped down a couple of years ago now, I believe. So, like the C-level suite is pretty empty at Rad, which is a bit concerning. We've obviously watched Rad sort of change and develop over the last few years. This is a company that only 4 years ago or so was raising hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. They're
And we
venture backed. Yeah,
and
they
we
had the highest. Sorry.
kind of thought they were like the leading brand in the US a few years ago. Like I think they were like the
Oh yeah,
biggest.
they were number one for a while. Certainly not anymore, but for years they were the number one brand. I mean, they were just selling these things like crazy. You just open up the tap and like money came out of Rad, I think, with the number of bikes they were selling. Now at the same time, they had like almost 1,000 employees at one point. So like the drain in the sink was pretty big too. Like they were burning through a lot of money there. Now they've had something like six rounds of layoffs in the last few years. And so they've really cut down the team. A lot of really good people were let go. Like I said, it was hard for me to even get a response from Rad because a lot of the PR team has been let go. they're still real active on Instagram. So it seems like, the social media team is still there, but the PR team less so. And so, they've really, really been trying to reduce that burn rate, I think. But to go from, the darling of the industry to, struggling to keep high level employees and losing a lot of your really good, important, mid-level employees is pretty troubling for sure. Now, I'm not saying that means we're looking at a bankruptcy next week, but we have seen many large e-bike companies go under. There were some that it was like already kind of a rocky ship, like Saunders, but there are others, Juiced Bikes, which for all intents and purposes seemed like a healthy, well-run e-bike company. And then kind of out of the blue for a lot of us, we were just dumbfounded to see this company go under. So it does have me worried what the coming weeks and months look like for Rad, and whether we're going to be headed in a similar direction there.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a shame too. I remember, when the Rad Runner came out, we're looking at on the screen, like we were like, this company is like not just, building, white label. They're actually designing really cool bikes, and I mean, I kind of defined a category for kind of a long time. Problem in this industry is that it seems like there's a new Chinese brand drop shipping every week, and names that you can barely pronounce, but bikes that are pretty good, and they're about $1,000, and they they work. And I guess Rad was trying to differentiate, but maybe they differentiated in way too many, way too much, way too expensive, less on the innovation front. And I guess it's hard to compete against these drop shippers. So kind of sad to see, and it's weird that all of our hero bike brands from 5 years ago, Saunders and Juiced and Rad, now are in big trouble. There's like nobody really left from the early e-bike era.
Yeah. It's really sad in a way when you think about a lot of these companies were the giants that led the way, and now they're struggling, they're going under, eclipsed by like the new kids on the block, basically.
Right. All right. Well, we'll have to see what happens here. Hopefully, there's a silver lining. All right. Next up, Segway's new Ninebot Max G3 scooter brings more speed, more tech, and more everything.
Yeah, Segway's been on a roll with these scooters. What was once like the silly mall cop balancing vehicle, since they've been bought by Ninebot, they've been sort of brought into the two-wheeled electric scooter fold, and they're just pumping these things out. The Max line is like one under their like crazy hyper scooter line. So this is very fast. I believe it's 28 miles an hour, long range, 50 miles, really nice electronic suite. So beautiful LCD display. I'm sorry, LED display, suspension front and rear in what's still a fairly small, lightweight folding scooter package. So like I said, under the sort of the hyper scooter level, it's not their crazy, 60-pound behemoth, but you're getting that speed, that performance, that suspension, that sort of thing in their new Max G3. It's probably the scooter that would fit the most number of commuters, I would say, because I'm not even a huge fan of the super scooters, they go crazy speeds and you can barely lift into a trunk. But these decently fast, up to what's effectively a class 3 e-bike speed in something that you can, fold and stick under your desk is a really powerful commuter tool for a lot of people. Now, there are those that don't want to go 28 miles per hour on 10-inch tires, and I get it. But there's a huge contingent of scooter riders that that's like what they see as micromobility. Like Seth, for you and I think to us, micromobility is like bikes and more. but there are a lot of people that are like scooter for life, like scooter die kind of folks. And so this is, I think, the main segment for those kinds of people. It's effectively like a class 3 e-bike in a scooter form. And what Segway's done is they've just brought like a lot of nice technology in their like tech suite to that space. So it's no longer just a fast, fairly powerful scooter. It's got great lighting. It's got the great tech features, built-in nav, built-in proximity unlocking. This one I don't think has the fingerprint reader, but a lot of them, you can have passwords, that sort of thing. So it's really more of like a high-tech scooter that has good performance than anything else. And to me, this checks a lot of boxes. 28 miles per hour for me is still within my comfort zone. By about like the high 30s to 40s when I'm starting to say like, yeah, maybe time to roll it back a little. But to me, this is like a perfect sweet spot.
Yeah.
Do you do much scooting, Seth?
Not really. I mean, usually it's when I'm like in LA and there's still some birds and limes around. But typically I prefer to go on a bike if possible. Just the stability and the comfort level there is a lot better. But
the same.
the scooters do make great, as you say, micro mobility transportation. And I get like this is a pretty compelling package here. As long as you feel safe going, higher speeds, 20 miles per hour and above. I think this is a great package. And you're right, it does seem like these things are getting so like fancy, and I'm still like, I'm always amazed that they can fit a 2000 watt motor. And what's the battery size? Battery's nuts too, right?
Yeah, like 50 miles of range. I forget what the watt hour is on this one. But yeah, there's a lot of battery in there.
Yeah, how do they fit such big motors on like these like microscopic wheel things? It's just, to me, it's just, I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they actually kind of have an advantage there in both cases, really. So for the battery, they're not trying to fit it in a bike tube, right? So they can use these big blocky batteries in the
Right.
deck, which they almost all are. They're usually prismatic cells, or at least like a big blocky battery. On the motor side, because they don't have spokes, the wheel is the motor, like right up to the rim. So they
Right.
used like the entire 10-inch wheel to build that motor in. So they've got a bit of an advantage there, I guess, that is a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, and so it's a 600 watt hour battery. But also, I guess it doesn't need the same kind of gearing that a bike needs.
Yeah, with the really small diameter, you don't need the same like crazy torque to get up to speed quickly. And this one, I think it said 0 to 15 in like 2 seconds or something. So like, yeah, in 2.4 seconds. So it's not one of these that like has that dull sort of long acceleration curve. It'll get you up there pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. If scooters are your thing, this might be the way to go. What is the total weight on this one? Do we know that?
I don't think I have that figure. No. With the dual suspension, it's decent sized motors. It's not going to be terribly lightweight.
Yeah.
I worry it's going to be a little heavy.
Yeah, that one. I have this like off-road one. It's just like, it's like a deadlift to get that thing in the back of a car. But that's what you get for the huge battery and motors and suspension and everything else.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Ultra fast. Speaking of bigger ones, ultra fast Apollo Phantom 2 electric scooter begins shipping.
Yeah. So Apollo, I really like what Apollo is doing. This is a Canadian electric scooter company, and they're known for not just sort of taking Chinese components out of a catalog and combining them together into a scooter. They design a lot of their components, and now they're making pretty much their whole scooters from the ground up. The newest, this is the Phantom 2.0. It comes in two variants of different power levels. The low power one is already super high. It gets up to, I think, just over 40 miles an hour. The higher power one is the 60 volt, gets 53 miles per hour, I believe. So, very fast scooters. Obviously, dual suspension. They've got this really nice LED surround lighting. And they've got their own design tech, so like their own controllers. The motors, I'm sure, are off the shelf, but they develop their own displays. Basically, all the electronics that goes in here is Apollo developed. So, very much a unique scooter. This is effectively becoming their new flagship scooter. And the Phantom did come out in several variants, but this is far and away the nicest one yet. I think I'm supposed to be getting the 52 volt version for review soon. I don't believe they're sending out the 60 volt version yet. I think the 52 volt is supposed to be shipping to pre-order holders soon. And then that higher power, higher speed 60 volt version, I think is still slated for June or July, something like that. But like I said, going 15 miles an hour is like a little much for me on a scooter anyway. So I'm perfectly happy with the more modest 52 volt version. But every time I've tried Apollo scooters, they've really impressed me with their ground up design. Everything's meant to work together. One thing I hate is that they go with this quad lock mount. So they have like a very basic LED display, and then they intend for you to use your phone with the app as like the real display.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they partner with quad lock, and so they put like the quad lock mount. But I have one of the other mounts, so it's very frustrating. I want to like change my phone mount or my phone case and all of that. So
oh right,
I
well,
wish it could just be universal, but who knows? But
yeah, I mean, I've had good experiences with Apollo scooters in the past. They're very solid, very I think they have a pretty good support network as well. I feel like there's like wasn't there like a recall or something where they supported their customers pretty well? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
I don't remember an Apollo recall, but there have been so many recently that maybe I'm forgetting it, but I don't recall one off the top of my head.
All right. Well, this is $2,400 starting price, and then 3,000 will be the MSRP, and then the 60 volt is at $3,500. So not cheap, but pretty high end, pretty speedy.
Yeah, you're paying for the tech and like the custom design controllers and stuff like that. Now, on the other hand, it's a little bit of a risk because, like we saw with Van Moof, when you do a whole lot of your own in-house stuff, like you're on the hook for it, right? If your controller has a systematic problem, you got to redesign that thing, and you got a lot of customers waiting. It doesn't
Right.
seem like Apollo's run into those issues, so that's good. But there is a downside to going custom. There's a lot of upside to it. You design it exactly the way you want, and you get the performance that you want your customers to have, but it's not without risk.
Right. And you have, I mean, it's pretty easy to see like this is a unique scooter. It's not like off the shelf. It's not like everybody's Segway. It's its own
Right.
thing. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Let's move on. And our last story, remember that $2,000 electric mini truck I bought from China? Now they're down to 1,000.
This is wild. This is like, the Weird Alibaba come to life. Originally, I covered this as a Weird Alibaba, and then was like, I gotta buy that stupid $2,000 electric pickup truck. And so I did. That was back in 2021. And amazingly, at a time when inflation is rampant and everything is getting more expensive, this mini truck has somehow gone down from 2,000 to only $1,000 from several suppliers. Now, I always put a caveat here, and I like explain to people that when I bought this thing, like, yes, I paid $2,000 to the factory, but that's not the end of it. Like, I ended up paying around $6,000 more in other like steps and ransoms along the way, customs, shipping, tariffs, even just like local delivery in the US was like another $1,000 on top of that. Just have someone bring it from the port, that sort of thing. So like, these like, yes, it was $2,000 in China, and the new one is $1,000. That's what you'd pay the Chinese factory. But I always warn people not to try and like buy one of these thinking that's how much it'll cost you in the end, because you got to pay out many more people along the way. The second issue is these are not street legal in the U.S. Now, the one that I got, we use it on my family's basically like homestead hobby farm, and it's great for off road. You know, we put like mud tires on it, changed out the springs, put a tow hitch on it. Like we pull the boat out of the lake with it. But you know, it's not street legal. So if you're getting it as like, oh, I'll take it around the neighborhood, you know, I'll go to Lowe's with it. Like, no, you're not going to be able to do that except in like 2 states that have really, really loose neighborhood electric vehicle laws.
Which states are those?
I think Utah is one, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Arizona, or was it New Mexico?
Not
Somewhere
Florida.
down the desert Southwest, where like basically if you've got a dune buggy, like you know, you put an orange triangle on it and it's fine.
Okay.
Um, So most everyone is not going to be able to use these on the roads. But it is really cool to see that these are becoming more accessible. And interestingly, so if you scroll down to the bottom of the post here, there was a community college somewhere in the US, I think it's Hine Community College, that recently put 4 of these up for auction. That I don't know the full story, only what I could glean from the like clearinghouse. But basically, they sold 4 of these in non-working condition. So, you know, maybe the controllers died, maybe the batteries died, maybe a controller just shook out, needs to be plugged in, like unclear. But they sold 4 of these. I think the winning bid was around $6,000 for someone who gets 4 non-working mini trucks. But apparently, these were imported and used by the community college police department at at Hine College there, and so they're not street legal unless you're the cops, and then I guess they're now street legal
Yeah.
when you make the rules.
Right. That's interesting that a college would go. I mean, I guess I would imagine there was some importer that was like, hey, these are golf carts, you know, like,
Yeah.
since you're making the rules anyway.
Yeah. But someone got a deal on these. Hopefully it's an easy fix. But you know, it shows the risk of these types of vehicles that, like, you know, when I got mine, I went in knowing like, all right, this thing could fall apart and I'll take that risk. And also, like, I've got a mechanical engineering degree and a lot of experience plugging wires together. So hopefully I can fix something if it breaks. Fortunately, I've had nothing major break on it. The rearview mirror keeps falling off, and that's about it. Yeah. But you know, there is that risk that, you know, this is a non-supported vehicle, right? Like you're on your own if something happens.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit scary, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Also, like, I think the unknowns when it comes to getting it from China to wherever they are. Um, I know you're a little bit more comfortable and have some experience with navigating customs and all that other stuff, but for most people, that's just a scary, like, you know, nobody knows how to navigate that stuff. So I think that's probably preventing a lot of people from doing it. I am surprised though that some company isn't buying, like, you know, thousands of these. Maybe this is where the police vehicles came in, and just, you know, spending, I guess now, $1,000 each, handling all the bribing and the customs and all the other stuff, and then selling them in the US for, you know, I mean, gems are going for like $20,000. I can imagine, you know, there is some room for margin on selling these, as long as you can figure out the nuances to, you know, like what happened to these 4, for instance.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there is one company in Utah, I think, Electric Import Motors, that does something kind of like what you're describing.
mhm.
Um, and they've got kind of like a nice little racket going because they don't really warranty them or anything. They're just like, we'll bring them in, and if you want to buy them, like, that's where the
Yeah.
relationship ends, which is, you know, nice for them, I guess. But these trucks are, I want to say, like 12 or $13,000 from them.
Oh,
So
geez.
yeah,
What a markup.
Yeah, a bit. No, I mean, like I said, I paid I think 8 or a little over 8 all in for mine. Um, and so like, someone who sees these for $1,000, even if I sold mine at cost, they'd be like, "Oh, you're marking it up 8 times," like so there's a lot of these hidden expenses that people don't realize, but yeah, by the time you get to 13, that's a pricey little truck.
Yeah. All right. So that's the end of the stories, but we do have some comments. It is 6 a.m. on the East Coast, so I was actually expecting nobody to comment, but do we know about the EV Doctor Kit? I don't
I'm
think I've
not
heard.
familiar with the EV Doctor Kit.
Right.
Shubham, if you want to add a comment letting us know what that is, but now I'm going to have to look it up at some
Yeah.
point.
All right. Don't you think the cadence sensors give more natural feel when riding instead of a torque sensor because it gives you instant boost powered by the electric motor? My initial reaction is I like both. When you get the instant and then you get the amount of power that you're providing as well, it's nice. But you're right, the cadence sensor is often quicker than the torque sensor. What, Micah, your take on that?
Yeah, but sometimes, so I would say sometimes it's more powerful than the torque sensor, but generally the torque sensor will come on more instantaneously. So to me, that's what's more natural feeling is like
Yeah.
the responsiveness. But the cadence sensor can like give you that huge like whoosh forward, which to some people is even disconcerting. But to others, like they want that, like, when I start pedaling, you start like really going kind of thing.
All right. Extra Hero. You guys started the podcast at a hilarious early time, but in fairness, we were warned. I guess, yeah, last night I posted. Is Electrek planning on reviewing the Expedition 2.0? Didn't we do that already?
No, I covered the launch, but I'm riding one right now, actually, in a beautiful blue color. So that review will be coming shortly. It's a really, really nice bike. I've been riding it with my niece and nephews, and it's like an awesome like passenger carrying cargo bike plus cargo. But I really like it for passengers.
Nice. All right. Every year, Micah does predictions about what's going to happen in the world of e-bikes for the new year. I don't think the Rad Power Bikes having these issues was on the old bingo card. I don't, I don't think we predicted that. No.
So actually, well, so yes, correct, but I think one of my predictions was that there were dominoes left to fall, and I said something about like there are some big companies that may not be safe, and I was basically implying Rad, but I don't know how valid this feeling is, but I feel like so for one, I have like a decent sized audience in the industry, and I worry that if I say something that's like my personal thoughts, it could negatively impact a company when it's just my speculation. So I didn't want to say like, I'm worried the Rad might fall. And then people say, well, I don't want to buy a bike from Rad if they're about to, you know what I mean? So yeah, I was worried about this specific situation and I sort of implied it, but without naming Rad.
Um, Guess I'm definitely not getting a dual battery Rad e-bike this year because I assume e-bike companies don't put out new bikes when they're doing these kinds of layoffs. Yeah, typically they're not doing new stuff. And then speaking of executives stepping down, have they all kept up with Storm Saunders after his company failed? A lot of cases, businessmen just move on to something new. Yeah, what's Storm up to these days? Do we know?
So Storm actually emailed me like 2 days ago.
No.
Believe it or not, like, yeah, so great timing. I wrote an article, man, it was over a year now, that basically exposed the financial dealings between Saunders and the factory that made the metacycles,
Right.
and how that relationship went sour. I was able to get like a great contact that worked at the factory and gave me like the whole inside. So fascinating. QS Motor, who is the Chinese company that makes the motors that the metacycle used, basically I think used like an AI engine and just like copied my article and put it on their website for some reason. I think they were tangentially related and saw a chance to create content. Storm Saunders, the guy behind Saunders, for some reason saw that article and responded with like an open letter to QS Motor to the like AI regurgitated version of my article. And then he sent his response to me, which is just like a, hey, because QS Motor mentioned Electrek, I thought I'd send this to you. And just the summary of the long and short of it is that Saunders, the motorcycle company, basically put down deposits and then bought several thousand motorcycles, and didn't finish paying for all of them, but convinced the company to send a few of the last containers before payment was received so that they could get the final payments, like convert the deposits from customers into final payments and use that to pay for future bikes. That's very non-traditional in the Chinese factories, but because Saunders is a big company, the factory like went along with it. At the same time, Saunders had already put down a deposit for like 6,000 more motorcycles. When things started going bad at Saunders and they wanted their next shipment of already made motorcycles to come in, they didn't have the money to pay for them. So they asked the factory to basically take their deposit for like the next 6,000 and apply that as the balance on their existing motorcycles. And the factory wouldn't do it because they'd already invested significantly in building a new line to make 6,000 motorcycles, hiring like 20 people, a bunch of parts. And so that's where things fell out. And that's what Saunders was explaining, was that, that basically if the factory had just played ball and sort of taken the money he had deposited with them for future work and applied it to the current bikes, then like Saunders could have made it in his words. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But like, I can understand why the factory didn't do that, because, with that big deposit, they went and bought a whole bunch of parts and hired a whole bunch of people and built a new assembly line. So that's like the latest from Storm. It seems like he's still in the industry. I don't know that he's going to be doing e-bikes or motorcycles again, but it doesn't seem like he's, like off and making lunchboxes now or something.
That's really interesting that he contacted you, especially since, we kind of covered some of the, I don't want to say shady, but like perhaps not traditional business practices that happened at the end there. And, they tried to do what are they trying to do? Like an IPO or a fundraise or?
Yeah, they're trying to do an IPO. It fell apart, and that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, I think, because they didn't get all the IPO funding, and they were left without, like a lifeline.
I mean, did he say what he's up to or what's going on?
He hinted at some things, but it was all off the record. So, there's nothing that I can say. That part, he requested off the record, and, I'm going to honor that. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem like he's moved on to another industry, that I can say.
All right. I think Micah's video in the mini electric truck went viral, and it definitely did. I think there was like 2 million views because the people who aren't interested in electric vehicles happen to be super interested in trucks. So everybody's happy. I will add, like in the last, I don't know, I want to say 3 months, I've seen so many copycat videos of, oh, I bought an electric truck, from China for $2,000. Like I've seen, like in my Instagram, Reels feed, like tons of people aping your post. So, I guess what people do is they look at like, hey, what are the popular videos? Let's make, that exact thing.
Yeah, like and a bunch of the big channels reached out to me, like Supercar Blondie reached out to me,
Oh,
Western
really?
Diesel reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, can you help us like reproduce your video?" It's like, dude, that's how I pay my rent. Like, what are you trying to rip off
You
my?
help us steal your stuff for us. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah. Like, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it. But like, why are you asking me to help you?
right.
So yeah, that's a bit wild. But yeah, like so back to the the comment from Extra Hero. Yeah, like I think the fact that these types of channels are doing this too is evidence to what he's saying, that like, trucks are the like gateway drug into EVs, I think, for a lot of these folks that wouldn't have considered it otherwise. And I wonder if even the Cybertruck in its weirdness was kind of a similar thing, like, oh, it's a truck, you say, kind of thing.
Right. All right, last one. The Segway Ninebot Max G3 e-kick scooter weighs approximately 42 pounds. Okay, so that's a nice lift. It's not like it's gonna separate some people from being able to put this in the back of a truck from not being able to. I'm not sure.
Move to the two-arm carry. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna be visiting the gym every once in a while if you're in the people who can carry this up a flight of stairs category. So
Yeah. Well, they're your 2,000-watt motors right there, right?
right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you want something fast and powerful. You got to pay for it somehow, and pounds is one of them.
Yep.
All right, so I think that's the end of the comment list. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in, and those of you that were here with us live. Thanks for getting up at the early hour. We're not normally here this early, so next week will probably be a little more sunlight showing while the show is on. But we'll
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes, and we'll join you back here in another 2 weeks for the next episode of the Wheelie Podcast. See you next time.